What is the most disgusting thing you have seen? I was a high school janitor years back. While cleaning the boys' locker room, I found a coconut in one of the toilets. But it wasn't really a coconut, it was a giant poop that could flush. Obviously I called all the other janitors over to see the monstrosity and help decide what to do with it. When Mr. Tidy Bowl himself walks over, he takes one hand and scoops it up like he's picking up a softball, then just chucks it in my trash can and goes back to work like we just wasted his time. Had a guy come into the ER that ripped his ball sack open on a wheelchair. As a dude, it made me cringe more than anything else I have ever seen. A couple years ago I was a supervisor at a beach. Every night before we closed we would go clean the bathhouses and take out garbages and stuff like that. This one night I was cleaning out the men's restroom and this old man came in and went into a stall to do his business. From the sound of it, he was exorcising some sort of demon. Anyway, he finishes up, no flush. Walks out of the stall, makes eye contact with me and nods. Then walks up to a garbage can and pulls his pants down to the floor and his briefs down to his knees. He must not have pulled his pants down to do his business because it was all in there. He proceeded to scoop it out with his bare hand and dump it into the trash can. When he was seemingly satisfied, he pulled his dirty underwear up and pulled his pants back up, whipped his hand on his back pocket and walked out without washing. I just kinda stood there mortified. I left the bathroom and my shiftmate said I looked like I saw a ghost, I was so white. My best friend's roommate used chewing tobacco. She liked Skoal. She used to spit into various capped bottles that she'd keep nearby and in arm's length, and dispose of them when she was done. Her girlfriend was over one evening, and we were in a heated discussion about something, I can't remember now, it's not at all pertinent to the story. Roommate left the room to relieve herself at a height of laughs and friendly arguing. Girlfriend reached for her soda and took a few gulps. It was not her soda. I still gag to this day, thinking about it. I witnessed it, I can't even imagine what the girlfriend experienced. Shout out the nurses, aides and doctors who may visit this thread. I was really close with my grandma in her final years. Very TLDR is that my uncle a few states over had completely neglected her care, so my dad and I moved her where we live to actually care for her. My uncle had never really visited her in her nursing home, and the nursing home more or less neglected her. So she developed a pressure wound that essentially had her screaming any time she moved. I saw that sucker when a nurse went to first examine it in her new facility we moved her to, obviously a much better facility, and where me/my parents could visit her 6 days a week. I'll never get that sight out of my eyes. A fist-deep hole in her back, basically, with part of her spine exposed. Thankfully she received better care and the wound and pain were managed to give her a few pain-minimized years before she eventually succumbed to osteomyelitis. Wound was just too deep by point we got her there. So I work as an embalming assistant while in embalming school. A few weeks into the job, the embalmer who was training me decided to not refrigerate a body we were taking to the crematory. She was notorious in the funeral home for lazy and sloppy work, as well as being spiteful toward any other workers in the building. Over a 4-day weekend. Unfortunately, the decedent was septic and morbidly obese, and the nursing home didn't clean them well, likely for months before their death, so grey and yellow-green fluid was leaking out from the patient's urinary catheter onto the floor into a 4-foot-wide puddle, and the smell had seemed to create its own barrier in the vicinity of the body. The body had been bloated with the tongue and eyes protruding and purge coming out the nose, and blisters filled with blood had already formed all along the skin. Still, because of this embalmer's screw-up, we had to move the body regardless of the amount of nasty we just walked into. We lift the gentleman off the table and transfer him to a cot. When it came time to roll the cot out to the transporting van, someone had to unlock the wheels to the cot to move the body. That someone ended up being me, while this embalmer waited. I should have figured out she was up to something, but I was oblivious and solely trying to just get the job done so I could scrub my soul. I was unlocking the last wheel, when suddenly the embalmer starts shaking the cot violently, and grey and green sludge fell off the cotton directly down my forehead and face, seeping under my mask. The smell wasn't just a rot smell. It was the smell of pus and decay and infected bowels and long-standing urine mixed into a lovely cocktail of loathing for the living world. It was enough to where the smell burned into the lizard part of my brain, randomly giving me phantom smells for the years to come. I remember this being the only time where I actually shut down emotionally, and I robotically walked to the sink and scrubbed my face, much to the laughter of the embalmer. She ended up getting fired for doing other similarly disgusting things, and I still haven't came across anything as bad as that for me. I'm probably going to hell for this. I was driving a friend of mine to an outpatient program we both attended. Everything was go fine and dandy until my friend screams at me to pull over, which I do, and then I smell it. Turns out she was abusing laxatives pretty badly and she had basically had a poop attack in my car. I was not mad at first, until I dropped her back home and realized it was all over my seat. Also, my seats are fabric, not leather or something that I could have easily removed. This was like 3 years ago and I still get the occasional whiff of it every now and then. I felt bad, but come on now. Ooh, I've shared this story a long time ago. Zookeeper here. I'm fairly certain we had a guest intentionally get pissed on by a lion. He came into the zoo early in the morning when we opened, and I first saw him standing near the lion enclosure, right up against the fence, when we let the lions out of the night stall. We have signs warning that the lions spray urine to mark territory, and they've been known to spray guests up to 6 feet through the fence, but I figured he was unaware. So I tell him, be careful, back up, the lions spray you if you're that close. He nodded, backed away, kept his head down. Half an hour later, as I'm cleaning, I see him right back up to the enclosure fence, closer than before. I'm not kidding, you're going to get sprayed, I told him. Backed away again. That was the last I saw of him, but I had a co-worker telling me half an hour later that sure enough, some guy got pissed on head to toe by our male lion, before walking straight out of the zoo. We got complaints all the rest of the day about how the bench area that he walked through reeked like cat piss, too. Fun times. I used to work in the medical field, and I was working with a doctor who was draining an abscess. She kept squeezing it harder and harder until it shot pus out, and it splattered on the doctor, me, and maybe worst of all, the wall behind her. I want to say thankfully the wall caught the most of it, but I was tasked to clean it up, so having to work with it post-body expulsion wasn't my favorite day. I think it was like 2nd grade during lunch. The way the cafeteria was set up, it was also the school's auditorium. Down the middle between all the lunch tables, the trash cans were lined up. This kid apparently drank too much chocolate milk and ran to one of the trash cans and started to throw up. As he threw up, he proceeded to catch it with his hands and slurp it back up. This caused most of the cafeteria to then start throwing up and the cafeteria being thrown into chaos. Years-old frozen hot dogs inside a school mini-freezer that was used once years ago for a school fundraising event. A teacher was recently moved from one classroom to another. Her new classroom was previously used as storage. She got changed because she needed the bigger space to accommodate all her books and class props, health and parenting class. As part of our community hours, she let a few of us 12th graders help her clean the classroom/storage room. My God, Jesus on heaven. The freezer was like 3 feet tall, 91 centimeters, and at least 2 feet, 60 centimeters, were filled with rock-solid ice. The teacher was shocked because no one knew about this freezer that had been using electricity for years. She asked me and another classmate to clean it. We connected a hose to the tap, and started pouring warm water in hopes of defrosting it. After like half an hour of just pouring water and spilling it out, the ice started to unstick from the freezer walls, but so did the stink. God, the smell. The memories are so vivid. It smelt like burnt and expired bacon. Like sweat mixed with shit. God, it's so nasty. So, we grabbed some yellow mom gloves and started breaking whatever ice chunks were breakable. After some pulling, we managed to remove a big piece of ice, and underneath was an open tray of hot dogs. And like a million maggots. Just so you know, I'm cringing and my eyes are watering. The smell, just the smell alone. Instinctually, we backed off and went looking for the teacher. We told her what had transpired, but she just asked us to clean it, while completely disregarding how bad the situation was. The tray was impaled in 2 feet of iceberg-looking ice. Another teacher's classroom was nearby, and she came to see what was going on because the smell was getting inside her classroom. She saw it, covered her face with her shirt, and started laughing her way away from the freezer. We had no idea how to deal with this, and the teacher wanted to save the freezer. So I went the Hispanic route and dumped a bunch of bleach into it just to see what would happen. Nothing happened, the bleach attack was ineffective. What else could we do? I know. How about we fill it with bleached water and tip it on its side just to see what would happen? Amazing. It only made the maggots slide around the icy slope all the way to the floor. I was about done with it until my classmate just started pulling the tray. And he got it in his hands. He immediately dropped it, of course, but there were more maggots underneath the area where the tray was impaled. I went to the teacher and told her that the fridge couldn't be salvaged, which prompted her to say, it can just be cleaned and used again. Since it was the last week in high school for me, along with the last community hours, also the last of my patience, I accidentally dropped the freezer from the stairs, which broke the lid and scraped the freezer a whole lot. Was it necessary? Probably not. Did I care at the time? Not at all. Do I regret doing it? Yes and no. The teacher clearly didn't care enough to clean it herself, and I was pissed. The school didn't even remember they had that fridge, and no retribution was taken against me. I left, graduated, went to prom, and here I am on Reddit telling the story about 7 years later. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.